It's Wellness Wednesday. It's Wellness Wednesday, and this Wellness Wednesday, I'm not full strength today. I record this Tuesday. It's 3:47 on Tuesday, and through large portions of the day yesterday, there were people who were formerly good enough friends to know what my trauma triggers are, deliberately stomping on them. And I'm not going to get into it because part of the problem is they're trying to get into my Discord server and they're watching content and it's just, anyway, the important part is I got repeatedly triggered in a fairly short period of time. And I'm still getting the adrenaline surges from it. So it was really hard to sleep last night. I couldn't do it until about 3 o'clock in the morning. So if I zone out or, things are a little rough, that's why. So I'll do the help support this channel and I'll get into it because this was something that I stumbled upon because there's certain social media channels that mostly on Threads that I subscribe to about mental health. And one of them used terminology that I thought was interesting, and it got me thinking, and for God's sakes, it's better than thinking about the stuff that happened. So if you like this content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. So what it was is talking about influence, focusing on influence instead of control with PTSD recovery. And I really respect this person. I think I get what he was saying, but I think there actually are times that, because the standard mantra with PTSD, especially when you're working through being triggered, is control what you can control, right? Because your brain is getting flooded with stress chemicals, which make you really want to do something. And that's how you get into trouble because you're not thinking clearly. You're just trying to make it all stop. And, best decisions are not made in those situations, especially when people are accusing you of hiding behind your disability when you explain, when you're triggered, you're not angry. It may seem angry because the person is yelling or like get away or like saying things, but it's actually internally terror. That's not hiding behind a mental illness. That's understanding the issue. They actually referred to it as a disability. Sure. But you can't control other people. This is what the control what you can control thing is all about, right? It's understanding that people are going to do things. Sometimes they're horrible. Sometimes they are reactions you're not going to like. You can't control them, and you have to set expectations accordingly. And I think that's what this person meant when they said, think about what you can influence, not control influence. And that's true when it comes to other people. But I know for me, the center of my CPTSD is that people will get angry at me, and when they get angry at me, they can do whatever they want to me, and I can't do anything but just submit and give them what they want, so they'll stop. And obviously that's not healthy, right? And for me, The language of influence feeds that, give them what they want and they'll stop. Whereas control is different because I can't control them. So don't try. They shouldn't be trying to control me. And that is where I find the most helpfulness with that particular language, because it makes abuse behaviors easier to spot. One of the things this person said is that I was hiding behind my disability and he'll care about my CPTSD when I start caring about people with personality disorders. And that's not how caring works, right? You can't just turn caring on and off like a tap. You can't control caring about someone. And part of the thing that made this so hard is I do still care about these two people that are coming after me that way. I can't control that. I can control recognizing that, based on their ongoing behavior, they're not good for me. And so I stay no contact. That's the difference, right? I find that, one of the things that my father used to scream at me, scream, till like 4:00 in the morning sometimes. You have to learn to control your emotions, right? You can't control your emotions. You can have impulse control. You can, to an extent, control your reaction. And all of these are limited resources, right? No one has perfect control. We can influence how we feel about things by what we tell ourselves about what's going on. But we can't control how we feel completely, right? And I think that's another thing he was getting at. Because it's okay to feel anything you feel. You can't do anything about it, right? You can stop beating yourself up. You can stop trying to get outcomes that just are likely not happening. And I find a lot of people who get stuck, they are stuck because there's a need that isn't being met. And unfortunately, these particular needs are very difficult without the cooperation of another person. One that comes up a lot is trying to understand what went wrong. And this is a very, very human thing, right? I welcome to my night last night. And it was actually a Discord moderator that said, stop, you're not going to know. You can't make sense out of that. It's just rage. And that put a piece in mind where, some people, and this is a control what you can control thing, right? Feeling angry, you can't help, right? Looking for reasons to be angry, looking for reasons to escalate instead of de-escalating, looking for an excuse, that you can't control, right? You have the power to control yourself and say, I'm going to stop looking. And it's hard. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but it's very, very important to keep in mind that when you've gone through young life, adolescence, right? Because when we're kids, we don't have the autonomy we have as adults, right? We're not self-actualized and we don't have the freedom to do a lot of stuff. And yeah, that involves the freedom to fuck up too, right? But still, the point stands that when we're kids, we are told what to do. And if we have nurturing parents who care that we seem upset, we seem in pain, we're taught one set of rules, right? If we grow up with parents who are the I'll give you something to cry about variety, we grow up on another set of rules. Similarly, if we go to a school where we feel safe, we're taught one set of rules. If we spend, most of our waking hours, which you do when you're in school full time, in a place that feels decidedly unsafe, again, you're taught a different set of rules. And these rules control our assumptions as adults. And we do have some control over whether we run with those assumptions, right? I found control very powerful. I said when I was really struggling yesterday, meaning Monday, because I'm recording this on Tuesday, I said I have to find something that I can control, because the fear of these people can just do whatever they want to me. They can keep taking out alt accounts and sending me shit that's full of half-truths and lies and worst-case assumptions, and they can, drop little hints that they know what I'm doing. They know, like, we know we're watching you, and that feels really helpless, right? So instead, what can I control? I started going through it. Well, I could just delete Blue Sky. I could, right? Okay, that's an option if it gets too bad, right? There are other things I can do as well. And this is where the influence comes in, right? The influence part is, I already have every known account of these two blocked. I find out about what they're doing through other people. And in some cases, it was good because they were putting my personal information on a public social media thing. Like, just... Anyway, I can't do anything about that, right? Reporting can influence whether Blue Sky takes it down, but can't control it, right? Telling people, please don't show me this stuff anymore, can influence them, but I can't control it. And then what do you do next, right? Because then that's where it gets hard. Because the trauma therapy that I took part in, it was pretty clear cut. Just anybody who's not helping you with their recovery, they have to go, and in this case, the falling out happened because something was happening that was counter to my recovery. I said so. They weren't going to stop. There was no compromise that wouldn't compromise somebody, right? And that's no one's fault. It's no one's fault. That happens sometimes. There can be good people who aren't good for you. And, you make choices. And in that case, it was a couple of bad ones. And one of the hardest parts about this stuff is that it gets worse before it gets better. And that's when you have to keep telling yourself you cannot control other people. And some other people, you have some degree of influence, but then again, we get into that danger zone with people-pleasing behavior, right? Oh, if I can influence them, then if I just say the right thing, if I just do the right thing, if I'm just perfect enough, well, then they'll stop being mean to me. And it doesn't always work like that, right? It's at what cost to your soul, right? I notice that an ongoing theme with this stuff is that people find some perceived flaw in me. And it's usually mind reading. It's usually some belief about my intentions, which isn't true, you know. I recently did the RADS test, you know, the how autistic are you? It's not diagnostic. It's just sort of, hey, if you score high, um, um, you might be. And I scored like 107, and 90 is apparently the threshold where you start thinking about, I know my brain doesn't work the way other people did. And everybody's got different backgrounds, right? I live, I grew up in an environment where people called each other on their crap. And I'm learning more and more. This is something I'm never going to adjust to, because people who grew up in higher socioeconomic brackets, they don't call people on their crap. They don't. I don't understand it. I'm never going to understand. There's this code that you're supposed to understand that I'm never going to get. Because where I come from, if somebody says something that's just lying to themselves, you know, they're just deluded. It's like, oh, come on, man, bullshit. And that's respectful. Well, some people don't think that, right? They think that's cruel. And to me, cruelty is deliberate. And so I do something, nothing intended by it. These people take it as deliberate. And this is where, do I know it's deliberate? Well, no, not really. And she's saying it's not. Why would she lie? You know? Well, maybe she is lying. Well, that means the best thing to do is just cut contact. There's no point in having any conversation. She's just going to lie. You see how there's other paths. There's other narrative paths that you can go down here. And that is within your control. Because if you don't, and you've been raised by someone abusive, the script is, they're out to get me. They mean to, I have to get them first. Because that's what you saw again and again and again growing up. That was normal for you. And normal doesn't mean healthy. So that's within your control. And, you know, how you conduct yourself can influence the conversation, in that, are you escalating or are you de-escalating? And if you want to escalate and you own it, that's one thing. But no one's making you escalate, right? You're either doing it on purpose or you're losing your shit. In my case, it's usually losing my shit. And those are tough too, right? Because one of my real triggers is someone just not talking to me for weeks at a time. A few days, or if someone says, I just need a bit, I'll talk to you and this amount of time, or I just need a couple days or something like that. If I have a basic idea, then okay, no problem. Like, great. But if it's just extended forever, I get antsier and antsier and antsier to the point that I have to go, okay, this has got to stop, or I got to walk, because it's just not good for me. My stress levels just go because I am not in control of what the association my brain does. Because when a lot of time passes before you have a conversation to work something out, okay? And again, control versus influence. The longer you sit there and run it over in your head again and again and again and again, this is why journaling is helpful, right? Because if you write it down at the time, you can go back and look immediately. This is why police try to take statements as soon as possible from people, because it does change in your mind, especially if you're rolling it over and over and over and over again. So if somebody has been chewing on it for a week or 2 weeks or months, the gulf in understanding the subjectivity on both people's parts grows and grows and grows. So one person can be absolutely sure someone said something that didn't happen because that's how it made them feel. And then the other person is going, I never said that. I said the opposite. And sometimes even if there's a record of it, the person won't believe them because the belief is so strong in their heads that, but so that's why I don't trust the long silences, right? It's better to work it out, like take time to cool down, work it out at the earliest possible moment because things are fresher. You're more likely, sometimes it's unavoidable, right? But there has to be an understanding that if things stretch that long, certain things aren't going to be resolved because no one was running a tape recorder. And it's, if there's a log, great, but that still comes down to what the person was feeling at the time, what the person meant at the time. And if you're not having a conversation with somebody where you trust what the person is telling you, personally, I think it's a waste of time to continue, because personally, I think you're just giving someone more ammunition at that point. If there is no trust, again, this is something I can control. If I realize I really don't trust a person, is in touch with reality, coming at me, not maliciously, not out for revenge, if I think they're being vindictive, and then I can control ending the conversation. I can control ending the association, right? I can say, I don't want to talk to you. Nothing is making me continue it. And that nothing is making me continue it is why, for me, control is a better thing to focus on, and what you can and can't control, than influence. Because you can influence everything, right? You can't influence I guess I was going to say you can't influence the weather, but climate change did, right? So, but you know what I mean? It's just a little too open-ended for me. And for other people, the idea might work better, in the case of you can influence outcomes, but you can't control them. Okay, that's practical, right? Yes, you can choose to escalate. You can choose to de-escalate. You can choose to give the other person the benefit of the doubt versus come across as non-trusting and say, I don't believe you. And sometimes you have to, because the problem is, hi Midna, the problem is you don't believe them. And then the question is, then what? Because one of the things you have to keep in mind when you've got a trauma condition, or even if there's anything in your past that causes you to have trust issues, is that because of what the person did? Or is that because you have trust issues, right? And this is a tough one, because okay, it's really obvious when someone's been lying to you about a bunch of things for a long time. But again, a lot of people stick around, especially with family. There's this thing with families where somebody's a known liar, but they say something and they seem so certain that people believe them, right? And some people aren't liars so much as they're lying to themselves, and they might not mean to, but that still means that in order to continue to associate with that person, uh, you have to accept that you can't trust anything they say because they lie about stuff it would be better if they told the truth. And is that good for you? For me, it's not. For me, that is a non-starter. I have to be able to trust the people I'm with because of what I do. Every person that works as a mental health advocate or a therapist, or especially when you wear two hats like me, where I'm a journalist part of the time, and people hate journalists, right? But I mean, I started the whole thing to parse the very, very dense language in mental health stuff into common speech, right? So, mental health professionals seem to really like it. There's some people on the internet that really resent it. And, that's another thing of, okay, I can see that it's there. Can I influence that attitude at all? Not really. You never change for your haters, right? You alter what you're doing for people who like parts of what you do, and don't like other things. If okay, if this is more effective here, if people prefer this, then I'll go that way. Okay. And that's why I don't understand why people hate watch anything. Like, why? What are you doing? It's not good to be angry and hateful all the time. And I truly believe that hate, not anger, anger, people get angry. But hate is something you actually can influence, not control. You can control the behaviors around the hate. And this may be a good way to see influence and control, right? Because your behaviors influence your feelings, but they don't control them. And I actually had a conversation with somebody about sometimes hate being a self-defense mechanism. And I know for me, if I'm legitimately feeling hate for somebody, that means something has to change. That is an alarm bell. That is a 5-alarm fire. That is, if I act on this, I'm not going to be my best self. So, the feeling's valid, but that's an all hands on deck. Angry is different. Angry, give it a bit of time. The anger will subside. But anger burns outside. Hate burns you from the inside, right? Its place is very short term in your life. And so I start going, all right, what can I do to stop feeling this way? Because it's not good for me, right? No contact is one thing. It's not going to stop them from talking shit about you. And one of the worst impulses on the internet, and it sucks when people are talking shit about you. It feels helpless, but there's a case of you can't control it. And in some cases, the more you try to influence it, the more they'll talk shit because they're getting to you, right? And you can't help it getting to you, but you can help the people pleasing, It's the problem a lot of game companies have of tell us how we suck some more. I don't agree with that. It's like, look, if you've got constructive criticism, emphasis on constructive, great, we can talk. But this is shit and you're shit. That's not constructive, right? So, okay, you got to get away from it. You got to get away from the stimulus that makes you hate, Don't force yourself to forgive. There is more and more and more coming out about forced forgiveness and how it's re-traumatizing. And with time and with working through it and with getting away from the immediate threat, I find I don't hate the person anymore. I feel sorry for them. I'd like them to stop. They need help, but I don't hate them. That works best for me. I'm not saying anybody else should live their life the way I do. That's just what works for me. It's too tiring. Hatred is just too tiring. I'm not somebody who can be angry for a really long time, which is why it's so odd when people call me a rageaholic. Because if I'm angry for more than like 15 minutes, I just dissolve into ugly crying. Like, it's just the way I work. So if you see me on Twitch or something like that, giving somebody shit, that's jousting, right? That's in good fun. I'm not really angry. I've just never had the skill of being able to be angry for very long. And yeah, I did call it a skill because unfortunately in the short term, people who can be angry and keep themselves angry and talk themselves into being angry, they can bash around and frighten people and coerce people into doing what they want. People will think they're an asshole, but they'll placate them, right? I don't have that skill. And I do think that there are some people out there that might want to think of me that way so that they don't have to own that they're out of control. They can't stop looking at what I write. They can't stop thinking about what I'm doing. They can't stop speculating about what I'm saying about them. That's on them. I have no control over that, and I'm also not going to let them control me by curbing what I say to avoid their wrath. That's just, I thought about doing that, and I think that's giving them too much control over me. And they've pretty much said they don't care. I don't think it's true, because if they didn't care, why are they so angry? But they've said they don't care. Okay, I take them at their word. If they don't care about me, I don't change my behavior for them. Right? That's something I can control. Is it scary? Yeah, because there's going to be more blowups. And I'm tired. But again, I can control, I've hired a social media person so that it looks better and it's more consistent and she knows what she's doing. And, I'm even afraid to talk about that because, they're going to harass her now to try to make her quit. Fortunately, she's more liberal with the block than I am. So, but it's, people who keep leaving nasty comments and keep dislike bombing Dragon Age videos. I mean, the video yesterday I put in Dragon Age the Veilguard. It won't autocomplete. They've gotten rid. It was there before. When I did the review last week, it was there before. Now it's gone. And someone said maybe that's why when I search Dragon Age Inquisition, a bunch of Veilguard content comes up. Probably because the thing that comes up is Dragon Age Inquisition Trespasser, the DLC. You can control acting in hate. You can, right? You are not gonna influence anybody in a positive way behaving that way. Trust me, one of the big motivators for me getting better control of my reactions to trauma is because I didn't like the consequences of what happened when I didn't do that stuff, right? And it's just, a lot of people are trapped in prisons of their own making, mental prisons, emotional prisons of their own making. They don't recognize what is in their control. They can't accept what's out of their control. And so everything is wibbly wobbly, and they end up really deflecting and projecting. And I mean, I used to do it too. I used to do a lot of saying something as fact that I was just afraid of, right? Or I did that stupid girl game of, you're angry at me because I couldn't admit I was angry at them. Or they hate me because I couldn't admit they hated them. Now I'm much better at that. Now I'll be like, oh yeah, I can't stand that fucker. And I work on it. I recognize that's my responsibility to step down from the hatred. I mean, I don't even hate Stalker Chan. That took a lot of work. Because you get in that, like, that's what turns you into a super villain, right? Just because a villain, like, say, what's his name? Something, Arthur Fleck? Is that it? In the Joker movie? Like, just because an anti-hero or a villain is relatable, we understand the spiral, doesn't mean we see them as a hero. And just because we understand why someone feels the need to burn it all down, we don't have to condone it, right? It's actually much better to criticize from a place of, no, I see how someone could reach that conclusion. I understand that you're scared and angry and hurt. Right is still right, wrong is still wrong. But I see that you're hurt. I accept that you're hurt, and then you get screamed at for sounding like a therapist. There's no winning, right? And that's why I tend to focus on control what I can control first. Let go of what I can't control second. That's the big part, right? It's less about what you can control and more recognizing first what you can't. And other people's behavior, you cannot control it. You can't. You can't. That's hard. That's scary to accept. Because the first thing that goes into the traumatized mind of, well, if I can't control it, they can do whatever they want. Yeah, they can do whatever they want. There's consequences if they cross certain lines. The reason Stalker Chan has shifted totally to online harassment instead of following me places still is that she knows that behavior's criminal. So she's using our glorious, glorious free speech laws to continue to pull her shit. And, I gotta be a good little libertarian here and go, I support free speech. People look like I've gone a second ahead. We're like, why don't you do something about her? It's like, it's free speech. The entire internet is governed by US free speech principles, which means she's allowed to lie. She's allowed to lie about me. I'm a certain amount of a public figure. I'm not a huge celebrity or anything like that, but I've been in the media a long time. People are allowed to lie. It's really upsetting when people believe the lies, but people are allowed to lie. I can't control that, right? And I'd waste a ton of time and energy trying to. It's just throwing yourself against a brick wall over and over again, right? And then you get into, what can I influence? And I was actually told by the police, look, you have free speech rights too. Tell your side of the story. Let people know what's going on, right? Of course, every hater I've picked up from them calls that defamation. It's only defamation if it's untrue and malicious and damaging, right? And the reason they actually said username, I chose not to, because I find every one of these narcissistic types, they get angry at you when you don't say their name, and they try to call attention to themselves. It's stunning to me how I'll do something thinking, well, I'll keep everybody's name out of it because that's the decent thing to do. I'll just say what happened. I won't lay blame, right? This is just what happened. It's amazing how people, instead of allowing their dignity to stay intact, they start going, it's me, she's talking about me. They ascribe all these weird motivations to why I did it that just aren't true. And it's like, that's on them, right? My intention was to do the most decent thing while still doing disclosure, which I strongly believe in, right? And of course, Stalker Chan has tried to jam her name in everywhere they possibly can. But the nice thing about that is that she's the one inserting her name into things, not me. So she can't come after me for defamation because I'm not confirming or denying that's the person. And even if I confirmed it, she was the one that inserted her name into it. If she's recognizing those behaviors in herself, that's partially a confession, right? So people come up with these ideas and they fling accusations and they do shit, and I can't do anything about it. And I tried to influence certain people to do better, and I failed. And, everybody makes mistakes. I did get, everybody gets frustrated with people, especially when they're stonewalling. And, when you're trying to work something out with someone, 2024 was a year that somebody treated me like Satan because I wouldn't let them move in with me rent-free for 5 months. Not just rent-free. I'd have to pay to feed them and the additional utilities because no job. That's not reasonable, right? And if somebody's going to blame me for that, there's absolutely nothing I can do to influence them that isn't placating them, that isn't people-pleasing, that doesn't involve some sort of lie to make them stop. And that's what I find eats at your soul when you start lying to keep the person placated. And here's why, okay? Because then you're trying to control them. You are. You're trying to stop them from flipping out. So you tell them what they want to hear instead of what's true. That's a manipulation. It is. It's a manipulation that's understandable, but it's a manipulation. If it doesn't work, you've sold your soul for an outcome that you can't control and that you can only influence for so long. And at what cost, And I look at all these people out here right now, who deliberately triggers someone because they're angry. To me, no matter how awful the other person is being, that's a line I won't cross. Not for them, but for me. Like when I cross that line, that's no longer about how terrible the other person is. That's about how terrible and vindictive and venal I am being. And I don't want that. So I'm not gonna do it. And this is one of the things that takes me out of hate. That I imagine what it's like for people Because I know what it was like when I made those excuses to myself, and it was a miserable, lonely place. And that was one of the cores of my inability to trust other people, because I knew I was lying and manipulating people. I didn't have words for it, but deep down, I knew I was saying things not because they were true, but to try to make the person stop hurting me, right? And I thought that person was a monster. So I don't expect people to do that for me, and I don't do that for other people anymore. People can rely on the fact that I may not always be nice, but I will always be authentic with them, because you can't tie things to outcomes. I mean, this is why there's a prohibition against fortune tellers in the Torah/Bible. It's not because, burn the witch. No, it's not about that. It's about, are you going to a fortune teller to learn something about yourself and your motivations? Some readings do that. Okay, that may not be a bad thing. That's self-discovery. But if you're going, when will I find love? Who will I marry? You're going after outcomes. And every time you go outcomes based primarily, win at all costs, you compromise your soul. You do. You do something you know is not right. And people who have to manage, PTSD is an emotional injury that gets better, but you're never going to be back who you were. You have to let that shit go. Which is why it's so stupid that people are still holding things against me from 2012. I went into trauma therapy in late 2013, right? Like, that was when I was in intense trauma therapy. So everything before that, I did some bad shit. I'm not that person anymore. I wasn't even that person then. That's the thing, right? That's what I understand. When you're driven to try to control things that you can't control, you become another person, and you become another person who deserves all the shit stuff that you're afraid of, And sometimes, and the shit stuff's going to happen no matter what you do sometimes. So don't sell your soul to try to game an outcome. That doesn't mean you don't behave strategically. That's a completely different video that I can do if you want it. But maybe I'll do that on Feedback Friday, because Tuesday I knew was going to be a shit show. I think I'm not even touching that. I made it for the people who want it, but video game character, not a big deal. Tosh is cool. I like Tosh. See, I know people are going to be mad at me for that. That was influence. I didn't have to say that. Right? But just because you influenced an outcome doesn't mean you're primarily responsible for it. Just tweaking a person. People tweak me all the time. And I have a choice to walk away. If I don't, and I lose it, learn for next time, right? Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. I got through that video. Fuck. Thanks for watching. And hopefully next week I will be more well. Sorry, I've got somebody who needs the be well. Thanks for watching, and be well.